warm in here.
Okay.
Trying to save taxes. Thanks.
I know. Warm in here. Everybody can remove.
Yeah, what's with this?
I have an excuse. I have a broken leg, so I'm all swollen. So I thought it was me that was hot. But it is warm in here.
He does have broken legs. How do you do that?
I need a better story. It's actually my tibia. My tibia broke, and they put a rod from my knee to my ankle. It's pretty cool.
The question remains, how did it happen?
I know. I was in Connecticut at a party, and I'm a big water skier, so I was doing some stuff, and I fell, and I didn't know it was shallow, and I landed the wrong way and just snapped.
5 years old.
Yeah. I know. My wife told me to grow up. I know. She was there.
One of those mile markers.
Exactly. Yeah, a little crazy.
How's your shoulder?
It's all right. I'm on the mend. I have to keep it elevated, that's all.
Took a long time though.
Okay, good morning. Yeah, it is warm in here. You guys can remove your blazers if you want. Protocol says so. Mr. Barbieri set the trend here. Thank you, Mr. Barbieri.
Yeah, you started.
Summer.
That's right. Welcome, everyone. Audit committee meeting. First thing I think we do, Claudia, is we go around the room and introduce ourselves.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I'd like to start down here in the corner because I'm not exactly sure who that nice lady is.
Tim Hall, Senior Attorney, School District.
Oh, welcome.
Frank Barbieri, School Board.
Maureen Warner, Principal Representative.
Ron Bennett, Audit Committee.
Debbie Manso, Audit Committee.
Dave Tyler, Audit Committee.
Noah Silver, Audit Committee.
Long Chiu, Inspector General.
Matt Bragg, Inspector General's Office.
Claudia Robbins, Inspector General's Office.
Michael Dixon, Audit Committee.
Richard Roberts, Audit Committee.
Nancy Samuels, Accounting.
Chantel Knowles, RSM.
Good morning, everyone. Donovan McGinley with RSM.
Welcome. Okay, welcome. Welcome, everybody. The first thing we do is we need an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Very good. Now, what about the minutes from the April 20th meeting?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. We'll go on from there. I don't think we have anyone from the public. Okay, very good. We have a couple audit reports. Mr. Chu is going to present the first one, Western Pines Middle School.
I'm going to
You are?
quickly here.
What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. This is one of the two reports we are presenting today. One is regarding the fundraiser at the Western Pine Middle School. This special review was requested by the principal that because the fundraisers actually it didn't involve a lot of money, but that some of the students had ordered the hoodies and did not receive them, and the principal felt uncomfortable and worrying about the money could be missing. So principal contacted our office, and then we did a very quick review of it, and then we found out there's some missing money, about $280, and then the staff involved returned the money to the school, and then we refer the case to OPS, Office of Professional Standard, and then later on refer to school police, and so but that the case was closed eventually. So and the other part is that there was some non-compliance with the fundraiser procedures, that the forms were not filled out properly, either by the wrong person or there's some document missing when they deposit the money in the job safe. So I think that pretty much what happened with this audit. Do we have any questions on it?
Any questions?
Not really, but just a comment. I always am curious whether that was a lack of training or just someone that was not following the proper procedures and policy. Okay, we have a both, right? Okay. Okay.
I had a question also. Evidently the school police closed the case back in December as unfounded, and it went to the Office of Professional Standards, and as of May, it's still an open case. Why why has it been open so long if basically it was considered unfounded by the school police?
Sometimes there are special requests by OPS. For this particular situation, there was some disagreement between the principal and staff, and because of the level of the non-compliance, it's not a lot of money, but the principal felt that other personal actions should be taken. So it was like a back and forth between the principal and OPS regarding what they should do with staff. And then they request that the case the report not be released because of the internal, still some ongoing discussions. So, and then we usually grant the request because number one, the non-compliance wasn't very significant, and the dollar amount was not very big. So we pretty much leave it to the principal's discretion so that they would reach at least some consensus and at least we could mitigate any future legal actions proceeds by staff.
Thank you.
Well, back to Ms. Manzo's question. I mean, if you're bringing it to the committee, because there's a report, there's nothing we could do here except understand if there's something that needs to be, in other words, like we've said before, is here we're trying to find if there's something wrong with process or procedure so we can improve it for all the schools. So is this an example of something that was an aberration? Or you said the procedures weren't followed. Does that mean that the principal or someone else wasn't checking to make sure they were followed so it doesn't happen? What is it that what can we learn from this?
Susie, you want to help answer?
Yeah. Hi, Susie.
Hi. This was one of those cases of staff not following existing procedure. The person that was collecting money for this fundraiser was not the fundraiser sponsor. It was kind of a different take on it. Normally, the sponsor of a fundraiser is responsible for collection. In this case, the front office staff member was taking the money, then handing the money off to the sponsor. So there was this huge gaping hole between the money collection before it got to the drop safe. So, they weren't following the existing procedure, and that was just, clear case on that situation. There was nothing wrong with the procedure, it just wasn't being followed.
And the sponsor did take the training. We did check that.
You did? Okay.
Interesting.
They
Okay.
took the training.
Didn't follow it. Right, that's why they're going to professional standards. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Move to accept the report? So move second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That passes. Yeah. I'd like to welcome, we have a new guest. What?
So he can introduce himself.
Yeah, you want to introduce yourself?
Are you talking to me, sir?
Yeah.
Hi, I wanted to come in real quick. Frank Kitzero, I'm the new police chief here for the school district police department. So I had on my calendar to come by this morning and just want to say hello and see if there's anything I can answer or do, or just at least so you see me, you know who I am.
There you go.
It's a big place, and I don't want to be walking around with your question. But anyway, anything at all that I can do or answer, I'd be more than happy to do.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We appreciate it.
There's a big void in northern Palm Beach County.
Okay, I have to pay you the $20 that I owe you now. Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Next report, Mr. Chu. Palm Beach Lakes Community School Collections.
Why not?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is related to the community school program, which is adult program. We kind of mentioned it in one of the reports in the past that the money paid by an outside vendor administrating the program fees and the collections, and the checks were floating around that didn't get to the school. So we are able to work with accounting to recommend that the checks be deposited directly into the school account. So this is one of the school that was involved. So in this report, we concluded that there were like almost $2,500 missing, and which was not accounted for. And then the other part was that about $4,200, the payment by the vendor will never make it to the school. So regarding the first part, the money missing, we referred to the OPS and school police. Police did the investigation. They agree, of course, they found out that there were non-compliance with the existing procedures. However, they could not build they were not able to establish probable cause that to be referred to the state attorney. So the case was closed. And then the staff involved eventually was terminated by the school district. And so no further actions were needed by OPS or school police. And the good thing coming out from this report was that we're able to make sure that all the future fees collection through the outside vendor will be able to make it to the school without delay and without the possibility of being missing.
To the school or to the district?
It goes directly to the district.
Goes to the district now.
ACH.
Right, okay, good. So it's going ACH directly to the district and the school gets the credit. Good. Okay.
And the other
Yes,
reason that we have been waiting was because school, this particular case was kind of handled by school police, kind of back and forth. So we have to wait until they finish and conclude it before we could send it out to the staff involved for 20-day response. That's why it's been delayed. So 20 days, another day. So it all adds up. And that's why we are not able to release the report until now.
Understood. Mr. Roberts?
Is the standard procedure for ActiveNet to send mail checks to all the schools? That seems kind of an old-fashioned way of doing things.
That was the old process, yes.
That was the process then. It's not now.
It is not any longer, no.
Sounded like a good way to
For all schools?
All of our schools,
Excellent.
they all come to the district.
Mr. Barbieri?
Yeah, Mr. Chu, if there were 16 payments that were made by check, why weren't we able to determine who cashed those checks and where they went? There must be records of what the issuing bank where those checks were issued on.
Mr. Chu? When the police did their investigation, my recollection is that those checks never, the writers were contacted, and when they checked, they never cleared the bank.
Right.
And then they just vanished into the vapor. They were never actually processed through the bank. So there was never really any money missing, according, to criminal law.
The checks were missing. The checks weren't, you don't think they were stolen? They were misplaced or something happened?
More likely. It was very disorganized. There was a lot of disorganization there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Dixon?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chu. Motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passes
I'll
unanimous.
second that.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, before you
yes,
move
sir.
on the next item,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
we have a little page of memo sent out today
Yes.
to your the audit committee attention about the notice of completion. To let you know that we did an audit regarding the crisis response plans at all the schools, and then you see all the requirements there. We looked into that, and because the audit result concluded that there's some information that related to the security system of the school, so we are not able to present it in the public. So we are planning to present the whole report and the management response to the school board and the superintendent at a closed door session sometime in August. So and also management has already responded that they concur, they agree with all the findings, and corrective actions are being developed, and some of them are being implemented immediately. So I just want to let you all know that we did the report, and it will be done according to the law, as allowed by the law. Am I
Very
correct?
good. Thank you.
I guess you told them the report was confidential.
Yes, confidential, yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
It's here.
It does say
Yeah. So exempt the document pursuant to the state law.
Good. Okay.
This is like a FYI, so that you know that this is one of the things it didn't come to the audit committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chu.
Can I ask a question? Is this done every year?
No, no.
First time.
This is the first time.
The policy was created in 2011.
Policy.
Yeah, for the crisis planning.
Mhm.
Okay, and so school police interact with the schools. The plans are submitted yearly to school police. Okay, that is the department that manages the plans.
And it's also interesting that
So this is the initial
This is the first audit of their
that
compliance
plan that
with it.
existed since 2011.
Right. At least by our,
But the plan's in place, it's just that this is the first time that we've checked it.
yes.
the requirements. Yeah,
Thank you.
And this is one of the programs that are being audited by other major school districts in the nation. So when we attend some seminars, so I think this is something we kind of catch on, even before the shootings that happen.
This is not a financial audit. This is an operational audit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Compliance.
Right.
Still subject to just us understanding that it's in place?
Yes.
Well, to make sure that the district's in compliance with the law.
If you look at the policy, it does require each school to create a plan to manage crisis
Okay.
within that school setting. They have teams. The policy require crisis management teams to be formed, for them to be trained. And it also looked at the school compliance with drills, emergency drills. And that's another policy that was
Thank you.
looked at. Okay.
Thank you.
We're required to update that plan every year.
Right. Every
part
year
of
they
our
submit
summer.
a plan to police. Right.
Mr. Barbieri?
Mr. Chu, I went over that plan with you yesterday, the confidential report, and I spoke to the deputy superintendent last night after the board meeting. He's not aware of some of the schools don't have the plans in place. Would you please make sure the deputy superintendent gets a copy of that report as soon as
Yes.
possible?
Yes.
He's here
This
now.
thing is being CC.
Yeah.
And then we'll make sure that they all get it at the same time, because this is confidential information. We like to control the distribution as much as we can.
Okay.
But staff who are involved in this in the whole program, they are well aware.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barbieri. Mr. Chu. Now we have an interesting part, especially for some of our members that are newer. You're going to go, we have a suggested audit plan, yes, Mr. Chu?
Do we?
You want to do that next?
Well, I mean, RSN come first, 5.1.
5-1, yeah.
They all depend with the RSM outside.
Right.
the exam.
You want to present that?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning again, Donovan McGinley for the record. Before you have the audit plan, this is for the financial audit for the year ended June 30th, 2018, that we are engaged to perform an audit. As we always mentioned before, this is our quote-unquote roadmap in terms of how we basically construct our audit process and some of the key elements that are embedded in our audit process. And the purpose of this exchange is for you to see what we have identified as some of the key areas, some of the high-risk areas, and it's an open dialogue to solicit feedback from you in the event that you see or feel there are other significant areas or concerns that we should incorporate in our audit process. Just briefly to talk a little bit how we construct this, we usually sit down with our engagement team. We almost start from scratch with a brainstorming session to go back and assess based on our past experience, based on the industry, based on our knowledge of changes in governmental accounting and our audit methodologies that are constantly changing to make sure that we have created a plan that will achieve the objectives and to afford us the ability to render an opinion on the financial statements. With that said, on page 2, I'm just going to go through some of the highlights and I'll go page by page. So on page 2, we're going to talk a little bit about what the scope of our service is. I think that's key to at least identify what are the objectives. The main and primary objective is to perform the audit with the intention of issuing an opinion on the district's basic financial statements, which is prepared by management. We will also be performing an audit on what we call the single audit. The current terminology is uniform guidance. This involves all the federal programs that the district participate in. And that's And in addition to that, we're also going to be issuing a management letter in accordance with the rules of the Auditor General of the state of Florida. One of the key things we want to talk about in terms of communication, our responsibility as it relates to communication is to always be transparent with this body. This is the body that we identify as is charged with governance and oversight for the financial reporting process. So we view this relationship important, and in the event that there are any significant items that we noted during the audit, not at the completion, it is our responsibility to bring that forward to this body. Some significant areas, an example would be fraud. And so if during the course of the audit we become aware of fraud, we want to make sure that this body is aware of that. Next, I want to briefly talk about the engagement team. I think that's critical. If you go to page 8, you'll see the engagement team. That is the core engagement team that's there to serve you. One of the takeaways from this is the fact that the consistency of the engagement team is critical in terms of what we think is crucial in terms of managing risk. We don't shuffle people in and out, year in, year out, and we bring people with the skill sets and the knowledge, not just with the industry, but with specifically to school districts that is here. Some people you probably want to see on here are some of our folks that are append to this, such as certain specialists. One of the things that we'll go over briefly is the fact that we're going to have a tax specialist that's going to be looking at this. We're going to have a cybersecurity specialist that's going to be helping us in this process. So these are people who, somewhat in the background, you probably won't see them, but they are going to be part of the engagement team to assist us with significant areas or new evolving areas. And cybersecurity is one of those things that we identify, and we'll talk a little bit about that going forward. On page 11, I want to highlight what we consider management's responsibilities, the responsibilities of management in terms of this process. First and foremost, they're responsible for preparing the financial statements or preparing the books of records that will get to the financial statements. They're also responsible for adhering and establishing and maintaining proper internal controls. And these are the following list of things that we think managements are the key responsibilities in this process. So our role is to assess management's responsibility against these criteria, and any deviation, any significant deviation from this will be somewhat communicated to you either in writing or verbally, depending on the significance or the severity of that deviance. Page 12, the next, talk about our deliverables. So we talk about what we're going to do, what management's responsibilities are. Well, this is what, at the end of the day, what we're going to do is to issue a report on the basic financial statements. As I mentioned before, we're going to issue a management letter, and which is going to be in accordance with the rules of the Auditor General. Well, there are some required communications on their professional standards that we are required to bring back to this body, which will be communicated in what we call our SAS 114 report. And they will, again, describe certain areas of highlights that we noted during the audit. For example, if there were any difficulties that we noted, or if there were any disagreements we had with management in the course of our audit, that will be communicated to you. On page 15 is our timeline. So this is our proposed timeline in terms of trying to at least, actually, I'm sorry, page 13, my apologies. Page 13 is the timeline. That's key to go over in terms of seeing how we intend to chart the audit, and consistent with prior years, with the intention of issuing this within the time frame that management has requested. Again, we've always had the benefit of having competent staff and competent management, and we don't see anything in the future that will prevent us from meeting this deadline, barring any natural occurrences or anything that we can't control.
It's similar to last year's?
Yes, it's similar to last year. And one of the things that we try to do is issue, and I think we did this last year, issue the financial statements and the single audit concurrently so that you have both reports, which kind of makes sense. Going forward, this is with a part now where we're getting a little bit into terms of the audit approach. So if we start, I guess, from page 15 now, this is where we kind of get into the meat of what we're doing. We segment the audit between basically two segments. We have a preliminary, which is interim, we call it, which I think we have started and completed that process already, and then final, which starts in September and goes through the probably end of October, mid-November, with the intention of issuing financial statements. But these are some of the items that the broad areas that we are going to cover in our audit approach in the different phases, in preliminary and final. Now, obviously, we're not detailing our roadmap and everything that we're going to do, because one of the underlying principles of an audit is the element of surprise, and we don't tell the secret sauce before the cake is baked. So, but this is basically the elements that we incorporate in the audit process. Now, with that, we have also outlined what we call areas of emphasis, and that's on page 18, which are the key areas of emphasis. And we segment these on their internal controls, on the routine type transactions, non-routine transactions, and estimates. On the bottom quadrants are usually the higher risk areas. When you have non-routine type transactions, they're not in the normal course, and typically those things are either through the interpretation of GAAP or policies that usually are at the risk of being mistreated or not properly treated, is the proper word. Estimates, because of its nature, inherent nature, are key, because it takes the objective element out of it and it becomes more subjective. With each of these significant estimates, we have our own specialist that's going to complement the district's process, and one of the things that we do is to look at what the process they have gone through in terms of how they have formed the foundation of their estimates, and making sure that it makes sense, it's consistently applied, and it's reasonable. These are you can see that the four key larger estimates that are included here.
Mr. McGillen?
Yes.
Is there anything significantly different on your area of emphasis this year? Not really. What will be a little bit different, not that it's different, but there's the add-on of the OPEB. So this year, the accounting standards require that the OPEB liability be, so that's going to be one additional estimate that will be part of this process. Okay.
And to that question, I guess the following page is kind of talking about some of the significant accounting areas. And what we have done here is chart this to identify the audit area, somewhat identify the key risk associated with those areas, and it says audit procedures, but it really should be audit process that we're going to at least try to comply with in terms of addressing each of these areas. And some of these key areas, we want to talk a little bit about self-insurance, which is one of the estimates. Yes, they're pretty much consistent with the prior year. And just for now, though, you can see what we have done is to put the approximate number, the dollar amount of the prior year, so you can see the magnitude of what that estimate is for each of these areas. So self-insurance is a big estimate, and as you can see what we consider the risk as it relates to the district and what our procedures are. Capital assets, revenue is pretty much routine, but capital assets is one of those key areas, not necessarily the fact that its existence, but what we have seen a lot is when construction are in place and assets are not moved from the in process to the completion to start the depreciation. That's one of the heightened risk that we have noted in widespread amongst governments. One of the other key areas, following pages,
one second.
Sure.
Just a question on the self-insurance claims liability. Yep. The first bullet on the risk. How do you determine that? And can you give me an example?
Yeah.
And how you determine that
It's reasonable?
That it's been misstated, and then
Sure.
how do you find that?
Good. So process starts with the district. So they have their own actuary that goes through an estimating process. So the actuary, this is their area of specialty. And they assess the dollar amount of what, based on historical trends and different logarithms that they run and different models that they run in terms of creating the estimate. We have our own actuaries that complement that to assess that it's right. So what they do is we look at all claims, historical claims that have been incurred, and what the payouts have been. So they model statistically, basically, what has occurred and what has been the financial result of what have occurred. So a slip and fall or a workman's comp claim, based on the nature of the claim, they have developed certain dollar parameters to say, okay, the likelihood of this being an extended claim is great. A school bus driver hurts his back or her back. They know what that equates to. School bus driver runs over someone. We know what, typically there's an estimating process, and it's a complement between the legal office in terms of trying to get the scope of the population of all claims and what the settlements have been.
So it's, this says that they're misstated. So how do you determine misstated in that?
There are various variables. So one is if claims that are out there are not included in the estimating process. So let's say there are lawsuits that have been filed against the district, and for some reason the actuary has not, the
Shown
process
them in
have
the-
not accounted for
Okay.
it. It's not been properly accounted for. But the other side to that is, is the amount that's being accounted for, is that reasonable? Do you think, because it's based on, again, all the elements are based on estimates. So is this claim based on historical trends reasonable to say that this is what the settlement's going to be? One of the hardest ones are really on the health side. I mean, typically on the litigation, you pretty much know what the parameters are. There's sovereign immunity. There's sovereign immunity that the district shares, but there's a lot of claims that go way above that.
Right.
But health on workman's comp, you never know when the employee is going to get back in service, and it varies. Depends on, I guess, the medical expertise in terms of when that, or the patient itself, when that person heals, and so it's very all.
Therein lies my question.
Yes,
Okay,
it's very
thank
complex. Yeah, but one of the things that we do, so you have two areas of specialty, two set of eyes are looking at this, and we've had situations, our clients that we've had very adverse disagreements that we think the liability is not properly stated or misstated, and we challenge that. We rigorously challenge the process, but it starts with the district. So you have to make sure you have the full population of all activities, and they have a third party that keeps track of claims and what has been settled and all that.
Understand all that. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Good question. Going forward to looking at some more of the other, I guess, significant areas, I would say, compliance with bond agreements. That's a significant area, because that's an area in terms of how dollars are spent. And just for purpose of reference, that's on page 21. Yep, there you are. In terms of how bond dollars are spent, because when we receive debt proceeds, the district receives debt proceeds, they're earmarked and restricted for certain specific use, and non-compliance with that we have seen with various entities that it triggers significant ramifications if that's not complied with, in terms of you get third parties such as the SEC coming in and looking at making certain assessments, because these are public funds, and there's required compliance to comply specifically with those dollars.
You talking about arbitrage requirements?
That's one too. So there's also the issue of arbitrage, where if you don't spend the money or you invest the money, there are actually three things. So you invest the money, and unfortunately in this time, because of interest rates, we don't have that situation pervasively anymore, because the spread is not. So arbitrage is just for the purpose of is the difference between the interest rate that we pay when we borrow money and the amount we earn on the unspent proceeds. And the tax laws basically say you can't earn more than what you're paying out. And if you do, you have to pay taxes on that.
Right.
And in the earlier years, believe it or not, those spreads were upside down, and many governmental entities were actually earning more interest than what they were paying, which intuitively is a good thing, but you still have to turn around and pay the taxes. The other side to it is that when you borrow money, there are other restrictions. You have a time period in which when you have to liquidate and spend the money, and if you don't, you lose certain benefits such as a tax exempt. One of the key elements of a government is the fact to issue debt under a tax exempt umbrella, and if you don't spend the money, then that issue in itself could lose the tax exempt status. The people who are holding the debt are not going to be too happy with that.
Right.
And it affects the district's, let's use borrowing potential in the future if those things happen. So that's a key area that we look at. Fortunately, we've never had an issue here. I think management has a good treasury structure that they keep on top of that stuff. The other thing I want to talk briefly about, we talked about taxes, and we're probably one of the few firms who assess or think tax is a significant area. And that's on the following page. In terms of tax compliance with a governmental entity, but there are various different tax and idiosyncrasies that are within the district or in a governmental entity that we need to be in compliant with. And the big ones are obviously payroll and benefits, and making sure that the district is properly tracking and keeping up with the current tax laws as it relates to payroll and benefits. The final thing I want to speak about, I briefly mentioned it about fraud. Our role as it relates to fraud is to, in the event that we're not here to find fraud or engage to.
On what page is it?
Okay, so I'm on page 25 now.
Yeah, you have that material in your handout also, because
So we got it now.
the system.
He has it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
He caught up.
So, as we mentioned, in terms of our constant assessment of fraud is ongoing.
Thank you, Bob. Okay.
But what we also ask,
Thank you.
and part of our process, is to, as you communicate with us in any which way or form, if you're aware of fraud, I'm sure you're not going to wait for me, but I'm going to employ you to at least inform us, if not in a public setting, at least a one-on-one setting, of an area of fraud that we need to be aware of, and vice versa. If we become aware of something, we are charged with the responsibility of informing you of that. So that's our plan. With that, I'll turn it over to any more questions that we can dialogue. And again, this is a working document, and I say work in the sense that this is not set in stone. So we start filing in September, we come across a new issue. Well, we have to change our process to address those issues.
Very good, thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Dixon?
This is a very broad question. In your process in the audit last year, you mentioned the audit risks.
Yep.
That you were going to define earlier in your presentation this morning. From last year's audit, is there anything that you identified last year as a potential from last year that you're going to revisit this year because of something that was identified in the prior year?
So typically what we do is
Very general question.
Yeah, a general question. The answer is yes. One of the things that we're charged is any findings that we have in the prior year, we're required to follow up in the current year to see that they're properly remediated or addressed.
Do you know what they are?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't think they had any findings last year.
There aren't any.
No, yeah. But to complement that is that one of the things that we do is...
That may not be good.
That's very good.
I know it's very good.
I understand.
Wrong side of the aisle here.
One of the other things that we do, though, in terms of to eliminate bias, is that we start with a blank slate. So we don't want to be biased with what we had last year. Of course, we're going to have that as a historical, but we start so that we have an open-minded assessment of risk in terms of how we formulate the plan. As I mentioned before, I didn't go over there. Well, for example, cybersecurity. This is one thing that is emerging as a huge risk factor in our world. And so we're going to obviously bring specialists in as it relates to that to help us assess. But you're right, there were no findings last year. I think there were findings in the previous years, and those findings were addressed. And so,
Who is Ward and Company?
I'm sorry?
Ward and Company?
So Ward
Who
and
are they?
Company, yeah, so Ward and Company is our SBE firm, and they are a local woman-owned business that resides in Palm Beach County. And we, as part of the district's goal to have small business be part of the engagement, we contract with them.
And what do they do?
They're part of the audit team.
Part of the committee.
Yeah, but in what part of the audit?
So there's no specific, we don't segment. They provide us staff, and we supervise the work they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of the contracts the district has, we have that provision in there.
Okay.
And then we have local people work. RSM supervises them, but
Yep.
they work together, and their staff is intermingled with the staff of RSM.
Exactly.
And they work together. Correct. How long has RSM been auditing the district?
So
this is the fourth year?
This is our third or fourth year.
The fourth
Yes.
year, right.
Yes.
And how much longer is your contract? You know?
I gotta go check on that.
Okay, that's
I
all
think we
right.
have a couple more years on our
Yeah, I thought
current
so.
contract.
So, Mr. Dixon, hopefully you'll be here. You'll see when we go through the process. We always have try and get a local firm to affiliate with them.
Yes.
And they do the presentation together.
Yep.
So you'll see that whole process.
That's correct.
It works very well, in my opinion.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. If you need anything, you let us know.
Certainly. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. We had someone join us. Ms. Rico, you joined us, yes?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, I asked the general counsel to come down, and I wanted the audit committee, if it's okay with you, to get an update on the Eagle Art situation so that the audit committee understands that the school board is working diligently to protect the funds for that charter school. We have closed sessions that you all don't get to hear about, but you read this stuff in the paper, and I wanted you to have a full understanding of what we're doing and how we're trying to protect the funds that the charter school has access to. So if you would allow Mrs. Rico to give a report to the audit committee at this time, I would appreciate it.
That'd be very nice. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. When Mr. Barbieri calls me Mrs. Rico, I know it's a grave situation. And it is. We're taking this action very, very seriously. The board has taken some bold moves to ensure accountability of this particular charter school. We have actually been working alongside the IG as well, where appropriate. As Mr. Barbieri indicated, we had a closed session. We've had a couple of them with the board concerning this ongoing litigation matter. And so for purposes of public conversation, I'm going to give you sort of a high-level chronology of events and sort of where we are in the process. This matter and this termination was acted upon by the board around March 16th. I think the date of the board meeting was March 14th, based on the statutory authorization for boards to terminate a charter school based on a failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management, other good cause, which includes deteriorating financial condition, financial emergency, noncompliance under the charter contract regarding fiscal management, questionable related party transactions, excessive administrative personnel costs, and discrepancies in Eagle Art's audit for FY 16-17, failure to disclose material subsequent events, and failure to provide the school board with a financial corrective action plan pursuant to the statute. So all of these were the bases of the termination back in March. The charter schools by statute are allowed to request an appeal to the Department of Administrative Hearings of the board's action. They did so on April 11th, and thereafter this litigation ensued in front of an administrative hearing officer, and it was very combative, very intense, and they did not have counsel until May 17th or thereafter. There was already a hearing date set for May 31st and June 1st. They then got outside counsel to represent them, and that firm complained to the judge that this was new, complex. They were new to the party and needed quite some time to get up to speed. We felt that was a bit disingenuous, since that same firm had been representing them according to their bills that they were submitting to us through the budget for the past 2 years concerning their financial issues and lease conflicts with the landlord. So the judge was sympathetic over our objections and rescheduled the hearing date to July 12th and 13th. Thereafter, we hired outside counsel, Ms. Elaine James, who is no stranger to the district, but is also very aggressive and a very excellent litigator and knows something about charter schools, and was able to hit the ground running. In addition to our in-house legal team, who's working alongside her, as well as our school district finance department and our charter school department. So it's been a very intense and proactive matter. One of the issues that was ongoing was their deteriorating financial condition, and it continued to deteriorate as the days went on. They were to provide an audit, and that was extended and extended and extended. And the review of the audit was determined by our review, as well as our expert consultant, that they still were not compliant and forthcoming about their financial condition. We continued to realize that they were not in compliance with their lease. They had over $700,000 or $800,000 in back rent that had not been paid since September of 2017. They also missed or were extremely late with employee salary payments. So at that point, the July payment was due, which was over $220,000. And we determined that this was imprudent, to make that payment, although the statute did not provide any guidance in such circumstances. So we filed an action with the circuit court to determine whether or not it was appropriate for us to make this payment based on their financial condition and ongoing financial deterioration. With that, and the reason we filed it in circuit court is there's no provision or jurisdiction with the Department of Administrative Hearings to hear such a matter. The Department of Administrative Hearings judge was not pleased with our position that he didn't have jurisdiction on this matter. The other side filed an emergency motion to compel us to pay, and with that there ensued a 2 or 3 hour hearing wherein the judge, in response to not being able to compel us to pay, took the hearing, which was then scheduled for August 9th, off the docket altogether, and so there is no hearing pending. We still need to get a termination order on this matter, so we are moving as quickly as we can to the circuit court to get a determination about this payment. In the meantime, Eagle Arts has been sued by their landlord for eviction. The procedure in the eviction proceeding, since it's a commercial matter, is I believe they have a 3-day period with which to bring their owed funds into the registry of the court, and if they do not, then the eviction matter is final. Meanwhile, Eagle Arts apparently subleases their facilities back to the church with which they are co-located. That subtenant also filed on the same day as the eviction a claim for wrongful termination or wrongful eviction. I'm not sure the exact nature or the detail of the suit, but apparently the subtenant has been paying Eagle Arts to the tune of over $6,000 a month in rent, also made certain improvements in the premises, and Eagle Arts locked them out of the premises. So there's an ongoing suit there. So the Eagle Arts is now facing about 4 lawsuits that we know of. and we continue to press forward with obtaining that termination order as quickly as we can, and also pursuing the declaratory action to make a determination about these escrowed funds. I will say that on behalf of the board, because there are no provisions for what to do in these circumstances with respect to these funds, we are taking the approach that based on all prudent fiduciary and equitable bases, we should not be making these payments under the circumstances. We hope we will prevail. We're also addressing it as a breach of contract type of claim where they have not performed under their charter agreement, so it would not be equitable for us to have to make those payments. We also requested from the Department of Education an inquiry as to whether or not these payments would be appropriately made under the circumstances. We noted that the July payment for capital funds by the Department of Education were also not made to Eagle Arts, and they were the only charter school on Palm Beach County's list that were not paid by the Department of Education. So that was, we felt, an indication of support for our position. So we will continue to move forward in this very unfortunately complex and sort of intense matter, but we'll keep you timely advised.
Mr. Chair, the Audit Committee should also know that there's about 380 children that are involved here that are registered to start school there. The school board wanted to close that school down in time for those children to be reassigned to other schools in the district. We have no opportunity to do that at this point, so school starts in a couple weeks. Presumably, those children are still going to be enrolled there if the eviction doesn't go through and we have children in a school that's financially bankrupt that we are not going to be able to help. So I'm sure you're going to read more about it in the newspapers, but the board is very concerned about those kids more than the money that we have to pay out. We're concerned about what happens to those children and the records that get we need to make sure the records get transferred so that we know where the children are, and we get them in the right classrooms and back in the traditional public school system or in other charter schools if they decide to go to other charter schools. But the board is concerned about those children there, obviously.
Okay, so the DOE withheld the funds.
They withheld the capital payment. Now, it's not a lot of money.
I'm not worried about the money. I'm worried about the precedent. If that's the only time they did it.
Right. We're not sure what that, that was a surprise to us, but it was an indication we felt. We're implying that they also felt that this entity should not be provided additional monies. The important thing to know, and I failed to make this clear, so let me do it at this point. The 2018 school year fiscal year ended on June 30th for them, just as it did for us. So all of our school district pass-through payments for FTE, capital, et cetera, were all paid through June 30th. This next payment for July begins the FY19 school year. So the discovery deposition of the chairman of or the executive director of Eagle Arts admitted that these new funds would be paid for outstanding bills and vendor and employee for the prior year. So that's inappropriate. Right. And I'm going to imply that perhaps the DOE felt the same way.
So you should also know that he's told his teachers that they can't get paid because the school district is withholding funds. So the 2019 payment that we're supposed to give him for this month that we haven't made, he's telling his teachers that that's the reason he can't make payroll and pay his teachers is because the school board.
Payment in arrears.
Right, because they take their payments like our teachers do over the 12-month period, and he doesn't have the money now to pay them, despite the fact that he's made payments to himself, his management company, his wife, and his daughter, who all provide services to the school. He's been paying them tens of thousands of dollars all year long, but he hasn't had money to pay his teachers or make sure that those children in that school get adequate education. All of his computer equipment has also been repossessed, apparently. We just found out yesterday. There's actually a video of him removing video cameras in the school and then they were reported stolen, and he's actually on the cameras taking them off the walls. I guess he didn't realize that they were on when he was removing them. But
so the DOE, can we just get to, it sounds like if they felt justified in withholding the payment, it seems to me if we can get to the DOE, they would definitely support the termination And then the other piece of the puzzle is, I assume we don't need to make any payments, and they're a breach of the charter if they don't have a edifice, if they don't have a facility.
Well, that's our position.
Right, and the
certainly.
facilities, it seems like the facility's gonna be gone within a couple of days, because the landlord's gonna get possession.
Exactly, but that isn't, so taking the DOE issue first, so we have written to the DOE an extensive letter to
Right.
get their position on this. Certainly in the declaratory action, they will be, their testimony is going to be
Right.
important. One of us will call them as a witness. So we wanted to get that information known as quickly as possible. Secondly, as to the facilities, we don't know if they're going to turn around and say, we've got another place, another location, even if they got evicted from there. So we have to wait and see, but we'll continue to evaluate those situations and determine whether or not there's any other thing under the statute if they actually don't have facilities where we can take further action.
Yeah, it makes sense. Being in the commercial real estate business, like a lot of you are, it's highly doubtful that a landlord would grant them a lease if it's known in the public sector that they haven't paid their rent since.
Correct.
So probability they don't want to have a facility and it'll be breach of their charter, and that's grounds for termination.
Right, that would provide another basis, most likely, for us to indicate that it would be an emergency termination as well for the
Thank
new
you for the
students.
update. Any other questions?
Yeah. How long ago did you send a letter to the DOE? Is that just recently, or?
Yes, this week.
Okay, so it's not that, well, you should have necessarily gotten something yet from them.
No, we haven't.
Okay.
You should also, I think it's important to note, back in February, when the capital millage outlay funds were to be issued to all charter schools under the new House Bill 7069 legislation, which we're also fighting in court based on its constitutionality, we did request DOE to give us guidance on this charter school and indicated, because it was already known that they were in this deteriorating financial condition in February. I believe the date for payments were February 9th. So we had requested to DOE whether or not it was appropriate based on their current known financial information, and we sent all that up there with detail. Because that capital millage outlay is eligibility is based on last year's audit.
Right.
So their condition was greatly changed, and we wanted DOE to know that. And they wrote back and did not give us any support for withholding that payment, so we had to make it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anything else?
Yeah, just want to.
Yes, Mr. Roberts.
And this might be something to Lung Chu's office. Do you know if they have engaged an outside auditor for the year that just ended, 2018?
You mean the charter school?
Yeah.
Yes, you said.
They had it.
She said they have it. It's been delayed. It hasn't. We don't have it yet. Right.
They did submit something in March, through March. Is it King? Do you guys remember their last? King.
Yeah.
Was their auditor, and it only went through March.
What's the name of the firm?
I believe it's King.
From the West Coast.
King and Walker.
Right. Where are they from?
West Coast, I think. Yeah,
Tampa area.
Tampa area.
Okay.
Bennett put this audit hat on. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Thank you, Ms. Rico. Appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Chu, the audit plan is important, your work plan. Do you think we have time to do it for this meeting, or you want to put it off?
We still have 30 minutes.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, good. Go right ahead, sir.
I'll finish quick.
No, that's okay. Go right ahead. Don't have to talk quick.
This is the process that we have been doing every year. Basically, we did everything very similar to RSM had done, but they are in much bigger scope. We've done our own risk analysis, and then based on our prior years, our recollections of all the areas that we need to focus on. So the screen a little bit, I think it's kind of small. But anyway, we have several major sections in the audit that we have. Number one, we have the internal funds audit for all the schools, and the other part is the performance audits. And then we do have some carry over from prior years. And then, so the first project we've been discussing is something very similar to what RSM will be doing, the cybersecurity. So we focus on certain areas that so that we could at least narrow it down, and then of course we will be working with our SM to make sure that we don't duplicate their efforts. And then the other project we are taking on is the diversity in the NWBE program. This project was requested by the state legislature that they suspect Broward County and Miami-Dade, both counties were not able to graduate some of their businesses after they their asset reached certain level. So they thought that it could happen in Palm Beach also. So this is a request from the state legislature through the audit committee. So we are taking on that and put it in a work plan. The third project is the school impact fees revenue. Palm Beach County has been traditionally one of the lowest in the state in terms of impact fees. So we want to look into that to see how the county calculates the impact fees and the basis of it, and try to find out why we are one of the lowest among all the counties.
Wait, hold on for a second. This is interesting. You're suggesting, this is interesting.
And just for clarification,
Yeah.
whenever you talk about impact fees, are you talking about the impact fees that the county collects on new construction? And of course, there's the committee that the county has, and then it goes to the Board of County Commission for them to determine whether they want to increase the impact fees to the level that the committee is recommending.
Well, we want to compare. I want to see the methodology.
I don't even think he's talking about the net number, and he wants this. I think you want to know that the district is getting its appropriate percentage
Compared to other counties, and the basis how they calculate on our behalf.
Interesting. Where'd that come from?
Again, do you, and I hear what you're saying, so do you have that authority to, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this, to require the county to charge impact fees that are more appropriate than what you?
That's not what he's saying. He just wants to make sure that he just wants to make sure the district, correct, is getting its the proper proportionate share. Correct?
And how do you do that?
I think these are two parts. The first one, we want to find out why we are the lowest, one of the lowest in the state.
Mathematically.
Yeah.
You want to understand the formulas, and that's all public.
Yes, and also if other counties could get higher,
Are receiving more.
why not us?
Well, you want to know if they are receiving more, what's the disparity and what the reason is for it. Just to understand it.
And I guess my question is, are you talking about the impact fee that you receive from the county from new construction?
Correct.
Yes.
That is the one you're talking
Correct.
about? Okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I'm just curious as to how much influence we're able to have
Well, he just
over
wants
that, with the committee
Yeah.
and then the actual county commission.
But the committee's only deals with the net number. Isn't the formula prescribed and statutory?
That's why we want to find
Yeah.
out.
Mr. Barbieri.
So just so you know, I think the school district gets about $1,950 per new home. I've had discussions with the county commissioners for 2 years or 3 years now. It's been ongoing they actually had a study done and showed that the impact fee should be closer to $10,000 per unit. It's been stalled, and every time it comes up for sort of a discussion, the big developers and the builders in the county push it off. So, and every time they issue a building permit, those are grandfathered in. So I guess the county commission is going to wait until every possible building permit's been issued in the county so that we don't have any money to build any new schools, because for $1,950 per home, you can do the math yourself. They build 1,000 homes, it's not enough to build a bathroom, let alone a brand new school. And in the past, we had the ability to collect the impact fees, or the developer would set aside land for us to build schools. Right now, we're in a situation where we have all new homes out on the West Boca, West Delray area that are being built along 441, and we have absolutely no land to build a school on because the developers aren't setting aside any land. And we have children that are coming into my district, in District 5, and the schools are all overcrowded. And just so you all know, the State Board of Education, we applied for brand new schools in the county, and they basically held off telling us we could build the 3 new schools, include the one in South County, because there's classroom space available in other parts of the district, and they don't understand why we can't bus children from the south area up to West Palm Beach or North Palm Beach and get them there on a bus within 30 minutes. So We have issues with the impact fees. If the county would just raise the impact fees, we'd have the money to buy land and build schools, but they've been holding off, like I said, for years. I guess they're going to wait until everything's built out, and then they'll change the impact fees when we can't get anything from anybody anyway.
So maybe this report will be used as leverage to be able to negotiate.
Yes,
Right.
it would be
good.
great if they find out that we're the lowest in the state, and we can use that publicly to try and.
Good.
Yeah, we like to do some analysis and let our school board to deal with the, from the policy decision standpoint.
500 hours.
The next project is the controls in updating student grades. During our regular audit and investigation for the last year, we have come across some grades, student grades had been updated, and we want to see what are the controls and approval procedures to make sure the grade update or changes are appropriate. So this will be district-wide process. Let me see if I could. Oh, this page has all the detail, the financials.
I'm in an audit committee.
The dollar amount and the staff involved. I'm sorry that I have no control of this.
That's okay. We got it on the screen here.
Okay. We just finished the performance audit. I
Can
can't
I ask
see.
a question on the work plan? Just a quick question. This plan you just had up there, how does that compare to last year
We
as a percentage?
almost the same, but almost the same. Yes, we put in more numbers in the unexpected area. Like right now, we are getting a lot of requests, and sometimes it takes longer. Like when we have to work with police, like Susie's been the one delegating. She was supposed to supervise part of the internal fund audit, but she has to devote more time to helping the police to get the file together for the state attorney. So that kind of unexpected. And then we also have some expansion of scope during our regular school audit that we have to push the projects off until we finish it. So right now we're picking up something like, if you can see it on your hard copy, we have several audits which are ongoing because we discovered something that during regular audit we have to expand it, like the aftercare program. Let me see, school food service, adult ed program compliance.
Right.
And
you're not finished yet.
Yeah, these are the things that we found there are some issues with the school audit, but we are not able to do it at the time, so we have to push it off until later.
Mr. Chu, can you put the plan back up again? No, you're not. Let's see if we can do that. Okay. I want to know about 3A.
3A. Oh, 3A, the lower. The oversight of contract award funded by the Health and Sales Tax. This is the one that we have been focusing on because we get the additional funding for the Health and Sales Tax that we are devoting at least one full-time staff looking into the major capital project and the major renovations.
So 3A1.
A1 and 2.
Well, just take one, because you're talking about the capital projects. So we have projects, we're going to have millions of dollars spent on improving or building schools. And we have someone on staff that's going to do full-time, oversee
Yes.
that process?
Yes, we have one right now, yes.
Who is that?
Ada Smith.
Is it oversee or doing audits?
Doing audits. Doing audit. Not only just audit, we actually have herself and her supervisor to attend some of the major contract awarded for the major purchases. So it's a complete like an high level oversight of how they spend the HEPS and sales tax.
Well, that's the money. So I'm talking about there's a budget, an approved budget for a project, and then there's draws that are going against the construction. So that will be audited as well during.
This one has been approved, not this is the ongoing funding. We're not talking about the new one that the school board was discussing.
Oh, okay. Mr. Barbieri?
Mr. Chair, I want the audit committee also know, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. At the last Construction Oversight Review Committee meeting, the district administration indicated that they were going out to bid to bring in an outside auditing company to audit construction projects And my suggestion was to the chief operating officer was, I don't want anybody circumventing the board policies we have in place for the Inspector General's office to do these audits. I don't want an outside company, personally as one board member, I don't want an outside auditing company auditing construction projects that's being used for the sales tax money. So I suggested that instead of hiring an outside firm, that we beef up the staff in the Inspector General's office, because we have $1.5 billion we're going to be spending over the next 10 years, and buy another construction auditor for the Inspector General's office rather than bringing in an outside firm, because at that Construction Oversight Review Committee, they also said that outside auditing firm would look at our policies and procedures to determine whether any changes should be made. That's the job of the Inspector General's office at the moment. I particularly don't want to see an outside firm trying to compete with our inside people, trying to figure out who's the best person on the block as to who's going to make recommendations on board policies. So I would like you all to make sure that you discuss whether or not you believe we should bring in an outside auditing firm to audit the sales tax money. At the same time, we have our own people doing that, or we should beef up the auditor's, Inspector General's office to bring in outside people to hire them in so that we can make sure we have inside staff to handle those audits of all that money that's being brought in. So.
Right.
I have discussed with Wanda Paul, our new chief operating officer.
I know.
And I asked her to come to the audit committee and to present her idea, and so that audit committee would be able to see the details of what and how they want to approach it and how much money it's going to cost.
So can we put that on the agenda for next meeting?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Right.
we are.
I agree.
So we're going to put, that will be in the agenda for next meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, in fact, I asked her to come over today, but she's going to
It
rush.
wasn't on the agenda. Mr. Dixon?
To do that, in preparation for this discussion, I think someone has to determine what we're talking about in dollars. Is 0.5% as compared to hiring versus what you're spending over a 10-year period?
Of course.
And that's an easy discussion
Right, do
to
the
have.
cost benefit.
It's an economic
Well,
discussion.
it's not only economic, it's also that they were looking at doing it, it's just doing it outside of the purview of,
Yeah, I got that part
Right.
too.
Yeah, and
I
Mrs.
agree.
Paul can obviously give you the cost. They don't have it. We were going out to bid, so they may have an idea what the outside firm was going to charge, because it's apparently a firm that does this all the time, but yeah.
well, he's also talking about the dollar amount that's going to be audited.
That's
That's
right,
what he's
yeah,
talking
okay.
about. Right, yeah, we'll have that information. So we'll put in the agenda for next meeting.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Barbieri, for bringing that up. Okay, Mr. Chu, sorry for the interruption.
Okay. The next project that we will be taking on is the overtime payroll that we did almost like once every 2-3 years. So we will be focusing on a few departments that had a lot of overtime, including the maintenance, transportation, and most likely the police department. Okay, and number 6 is the band program fundraising and expenditures. We put it in the work plan because we get a few complaints regarding the band program in some of our major high schools, that the band director is able to collect a lot of money. We're not sure if the money was properly accounted for, and also the way that we hire outside consultants, that we want to make sure that they have gone through all the clearance check, which might not have happened. So, and also the way that they spend money, sometimes it may not be covered by the internal funds process. So this is very general, based on the information we get from the investigation. So we want to put it as a district-wide audit rather than couple schools. Number 7, an enhanced cash count at the school. We've been doing this every year. Data and analytics. This is an ongoing process that we look into the existing data to see if there are any trends for the major programs. Special request, and this is like a plug-in because we're not sure how many we can do. But a lot of time, because of the urgency request, we have to drop everything and do the special request. There were several ongoing projects we carried forward from last year. The cybersecurity, we are working on the part 1. We will be doing the second part in more detail. The NAPA contract, the compliance. This one is the maintenance contract that we have them to to purchase all the supplies and then we order from them. So they are doing pretty much like infant control and issuance and also return of the supplies that the maintenance people need. Other care program, we haven't touched this program for a little while because we did before because of the improving controls. So since we haven't done it, then we would like to go back based on what we have found during our regular audit. So we have selected a few schools that seem like may have problems. So we are going back to look at all of them at the same time. The charter school, right now we are focusing on the procedures in safeguarded assets funded by tax dollar in case a charter school had to close. The Eagle Arts is one of the schools that is an example in this category. We have another 6 or 7 reports which are in the final stage for the report preparation. So we expect these reports to come out during the next couple of months. Most of them the field works are done and they're in the report preparation. So you see that we have the crisis team we just mentioned is done, so it will be presented to the board in a closed door session. Payroll compliance, food services, adult ed compliance, Troiger ordering system, and the competitive solicitation. For number 10 here, this is also include the projects funded by the HEPS and sales tax and driver license record verification. So these are the ongoing report finalized stage. So hopefully you look forward to get this thing out to you all before we start the school audits again when the school opens sometime. After August. So most likely will be in September. So we have a full swing of the school audits. And the other part, investigation is still going on. And then also, we have attached some information as FYI under tab 8.1, which give you a lot of statistics. I'm going to cover that regarding investigation, open, refer, and close, and it's ongoing. Okay, so that's for investigation. And compliance and quality assurance. Something that we have been working on is that try to get is part of the investigation, the accreditation by the Commission for Florida Law Enforcement. Staff has been working on it, and we tried to get the software for the case tracking system, and it's been not going on very timely due to some concern about the confidentiality of the information. So I think staff is looking into another vendor to see if we could at least team up with school police and as well as OPS to see if they could share the cost with us. Other things that we're going to work on is to prepare for our peer review for next year. So I think that the time, I think maybe sometime March 2019. So it's coming on board again. And so all the rest are the standard thing that we've been working on.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for inserting myself in your discussions today, but I wanted to bring something else to the Audit Committee's attention. If you look under Compliance and Quality Assurance, number A, Oversight of Contract Awards, I also serve as the board's representative on the Construction Oversight Review Committee. And it's come to my attention that at the Construction Oversight Review Committee meetings, there's a selection committee that decides how many points are awarded to people that bid, so that the school board awards the contracts to the people with the most points. And on that selection committee, they have Cork members. Now, I give them a lot of credit because they're volunteers like all of you and they spend their time, but we have Cork members who are not subject to any oversight by the school district or the school board that are awarding points that are on those selection committees. So at one selection committee meeting in the past, actually a school in my district, there were 2 architects up for the award of the bid, and the non-paid Cork member was able to push his points to one direction, to flip the points around so that the first one didn't get it, and the second architectural company got it. So my concern is that we have people that are on the selection committee. The rest of the people on the selection committee are our employees. But my opinion is there should not be people on the selection committee who have the ability to push an award one direction that are not subject to any oversight by the school district administration, and they're not answerable to anybody. So maybe you all could take a look at that situation and see what your opinion is and whether or not there should be unpaid people on selection committees. Because not only did they get the vote at that point, but then it comes back to Cork and there's another vote, whether they support the award. So in this case, the Cork members have the ability to twice vote on.
Has the legal answered any of these questions?
Pardon me?
Has the legal office answered any of these questions?
No, I haven't.
For possible conflict?
I haven't brought it.
I think
They're
we
aware of
should
my
start
concerns too.
there.
They're aware of my concerns.
The Cork members are appointed by the school board,
That's correct.
Yeah.
and they're supposed to be, and they sign that they're independent.
That's correct.
I still understand
But
I still understand what you're
but
saying.
still,
Yeah, I
I
understand.
think
Ms.
we
Manzo.
need-
And a policy question. Is this a procedure or policy that states that the outside person is part of the committee, or how does that work? I mean, who
You
determines
mean, how
who's
do
on the
Cork
committee?
members get to be on the procurement
Yes.
selection committee? I don't know.
I
Do you
don't
know?
believe there's a policy. It's
No, it wouldn't be in
a
policy.
process, procedure that's been used and
Huh. Yeah, so we could review, the policy could be reviewed. I mean, for instance, here, we advise for RSM. I mean, when the time comes, everybody here in this committee looks at it, and we look, but we've all said that we're independent, and we score it.
You by law
Right.
must participate in
There's-
that
Right, we have to
process. So
participate.
that's
Right.
different.
That's,
Okay.
that's required by state statute.
There's,
Right.
The audit related.
yeah, I mean, there's
But I hear,
a
what- yeah,
policy
I
that
think,
says.
Mr. Barber, we need to get with legal and start there.
Yeah,
Yes, we'll
Okay.
have to look into that.
All right,
issue.
yes, okay.
you're absolutely correct, right. Interesting. Good, okay, thanks for interjecting. Mr. Chu.
Okay, thank you. I think they pretty much cover our work plan, and then we try to cut down the project so that we could take care of the emergency request. And this is one of the recommendations by the former peer review recommendations that we take on too many projects. So maybe we just have to modify that approach a little bit. But I like to be more aggressive to cover as much as we can. If we cannot finish it, we would like to carry forward for the next year. So,
Any questions? Mr. Bennett, you usually have something to say about this?
I got a question. It doesn't relate exactly to what we're talking about here, but the construction oversight, and you're talking about hiring an outside auditor. But one of the most important things you have is not the auditor, but the construction management. When we have these major projects, who's doing a construction management? Is that inside, or are we hiring outside
Hired
architects and
outside
engineers
for
to do that, or?
This is
They hired
this is the
outside.
first time we hired an outside firm to
Okay.
help
Yeah.
supervise and manage the construction, although we have our internal staff in the construction area.
And I'll say why that's important, how it ties in with financial. You know, all these construction contracts, they got all these milestones, you know, you got a Gantt chart that looks like the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? And every month, the contractor submits a request for payment,
Right.
and on there, you know, he's got to meet certain milestones to get paid for those milestones. It's the engineers and architects that tell you they got to sign off on this thing before you pay them. If those guys don't get it right, you're paying for work you didn't get. So I consider those to be the most important guys on the job.
Absolutely.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Right. That's why internal does it. They've been doing it for years, and now they have an external firm, but our internal people are also doing them. And
So
I
if you
assume
wanna
the external firm.
collaborate on that, or
That we don't know. I don't know if there's I assume there is. I assume there's a flat rate on the third party management committee, but I don't know.
I know as an auditor, you go back and look at you
Right.
audit one of these construction contracts, and you've got all these requests for payment, and you're going,
That's right.
what we're looking for is, okay, how much work they do? Does it have all the sign-offs? You know, they got to release the liens?
That's right.
Have they got the sign-off by the architect?
All the subs, everybody.
Whoever. So when you're going back and looking at it, you know, after the fact, you just have to assume that they did what the guy signed off and said they did.
Of course.
And so you really can't tell unless somebody paid for something, you know, that wasn't even on the contract, those kind of things, well, they asked for this much and we paid this much, or they gave them their retainage early, or those kind of things. But the real, where the rubber meets the road is how much physical construction was done.
Correct.
At what point, and when was it paid?
Well, we probably have the inspectors look at it. That's what the firm does. They do it, they oversee it, they release it. And if we're paying them, they're liable for professional judgment.
Mr. Chair, they get paid a percentage. ACOM gets a percentage fee based on the amount of the contract. So it's not a flat fee. It's a percentage fee of the award.
Well, it's a percentage fee of the award, but it's a fixed amount. It's a fixed amount once they come up with an amount, with a number.
It's a percentage.
Right. Right. It's calculated off a percentage of the award. Right.
I wasn't so concerned about what we're paying them. I'm concerned more about what we're paying the contractor that's doing the work.
Oh, I see.
And those guys are doing an adequate job of oversight on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to look into it. Thank you, Mr. Chu.
Yeah, we need your approval, and then we will proceed with having a workshop with the school board.
Okay.
And then we'll walk through all the project with them again.
So any other questions on the plan, or the plan itself? No? Okay, so a motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion to
Oh, yes.
approve.
Okay, motion to approve?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So moved, Mr. Chu.
Thank
And
you,
Mr. McGinley, I don't think we need to approve your plan. We've already hired you. You can do whatever you want. We can just ask you questions. Yes, Ms. Manson?
I apologize, but
Yeah.
I have another meeting that
Oh,
I got to
go.
go to, so I have not,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay.
Apologize.
Do we have anything else, Mr. Chu?
Well,
Let's look at our
what the
agenda.
last part is the FII, number 8.1.
Right,
8.1. These are the additional information that I'd like to give the audit committee so that you all know the more details about the number, the statistic for the ongoing investigation, number of cases we receive and refer out to other people.
That's good.
And then and the impact. I think most important is the impact. What are the recommendations? That how do they impact on the school district operations, even from the investigation side. So we list everything in here, all the details as much as we can, and also from school audit side. And then something interesting that I'd like to bring to your attention is we have included a list of the schools that had ongoing, continuous, repeated problems. We refer 1, 2, 3, 4, like almost 10 pages of the school without the name of the employee. We redacted the name, and then we give this to OPS and also, of course, the principal.
And the area
aware.
supervisors.
Yeah,
Okay.
and regarding what have been repeated. And then these are pretty much significant that because we are seeing some schools keep doing the same thing to avoid the finding, and we couldn't prove it. So we kind of pointed it out in one of the
Mr.
FII
Chu?
items.
Mr. Chu, would you be able to share that with me as well, or no?
Yeah, it's in here. Inside.
It's in your book.
Oh,
No, I'm looking for the
yes,
people.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, the people.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because we have been talking about this for quite a while. And then OPS we'd like them to take some action, and then we'll follow up with them, see what they have done.
There's a chart on the screen here, which I'd like to see.
Wow, this is
This chart looks very nice.
That's
This is from
I know.
Yeah, so this is
like this
an update on our drop safe logs. We have over 22,000 log pages,
It's amazing.
so from all the schools.
What do you think, Mr. Barbieri? Look at that, not uploaded. Zeros and ones.
I have them.
What a pleasure.
I have them permanently in our servers.
Wow, what a pleasure.
So as you can see, we have compliance from everyone but one, and we have worked with the IG on 2 schools that we had found some inconsistencies, and they were doing some investigations on them. One of them, we were able to obtain all the pages, and then there's still only one school that I think the IG has all of their documents, so we won't get those drop safe log pages for a while. But I am very happy to report that the schools have done a very good job getting everything to us.
Very nice.
What else do I want to tell you? We did do 22, we went physically to 22 schools to give them one-on-one training. So, we had the ELM out there for, so people could just watch and learn how to do the the drop safe logs.
Wow.
But we did send our analyst out, and he actually walked them, 22 schools, he walked them through the whole process. So I feel it's a big win.
Well, technology's improved us, Mr. Barber. We don't have to worry about the lock and chain on the book anymore. What a pleasure. It's a nice win. It took years for that. Good. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Chu?
I think that concludes our.
Okay. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Roberts? Second, Mr. Dixon? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, are we going to let the audit committee know that when
I'm
is
sorry.
the workshop day?
Yes.
So that I hope that some of you can come to attend,
workshop
have the discussion. Oh, and also
And we need to talk about you.
one item,
We'll
yeah,
talk about you next
forget. I will have 22 more months to retire.
Yeah.
22 months?
22
Yeah.
more months.
God bless you.
So just wanted to know that.
We'll talk next meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we put that on the agenda?
Yes.
Everybody can bring it up.
Yes, sir.
Put it on the agenda. Thank you. I feel pretty good. Consider